What's happening, everybody? Coast to Coast podcast coming at you. I am Joey Powell. This is Inside Carolina's weekly overall view of Tar Heel basketball. We're brought to you by Johnny T-Shirt, johnnytshirt.com. Glad everybody is here. It's our weekly installment of the Coast to Coast podcast that we do during basketball season. Hope that you have had a great week and appreciate you joining us. Hey, if you have not yet, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Uh, Big shout out to John Bauman and everybody who works on the IC YouTube channel. Got over 20,000 subscribers last week. So, hey, we want you to be in that number. Want you to be counted in that group of IC subscribers and big Tar Heel fans. So go on over, subscribe to the YouTube channel if you haven't. All this stuff will be there for you. And even if you're just here listening to us on the typical audible mediums, we appreciate you listening to us and making this podcast part of your regular rotation. As always, we'd love your feedback. Hit me up, Joey at InsideCarolina.com, or shout us out on the message boards. Let us know what you like, don't like, et cetera, et cetera. But enough about that. Let's move on to the two gentlemen that you guys are here to hear from. Sean Moran, Sherrell McMillan, the guys that make this show what it is. Fellas, appreciate you joining us as always. In the book, since we last spoke, the Tar Heels have now added two more wins, one on the road in a very, as expected, hostile environment in Raleigh. Uh, as always, the vitriol was at high levels and being hurled vehemently at Tar Heel players and fans and coaches alike. Tar Heels walk out of there with a win, which in the second half just really they put the hammer down really quickly. That went from a close game to a not close game in what seemed like a blank. And I know folks listening to the show were probably happy to see that materialize. And the Tar Heels came back home for their what seemed like their only second game in about 3 years in the Smith Center, and just absolutely undressed Syracuse on national television. That game probably should have come with a rated R or even an NC-17 warning, because that was not safe for children and/or families. Tar Heels absolutely just laying a biscuit down on Syracuse, who looked like they just and shout out to Bobby Fraser for doing the post game with me yesterday. He made this comment. I think he's right. Syracuse just looked like they quit once North Carolina kind of started putting the paddle to them. So, guys, I'll come to you first. Sean, tell me what your one or two biggest takeaways from these two wins were this week for the Tar Heels.
I think it was great seeing them go 2-0, especially closing out that 3-game road streak with a win. I think they had two very different type of performances from really struggling on offense against NC State, but playing great defensively, and then Syracuse, where they're able to really have their best offensive game in the new year, and the best one for quite some time against say a Power 5 team. So I think it was great to see. I guess the two sides, right? Once again, we're talking non-tournament teams, most likely that they're winning against, but at the same time, they, especially the NC State game, actually both games, NC State, they controlled it, similar to what we talked about last week with Pitt and Clemson. They controlled the game, even when there are stretches where the league could be cut, or even last year where you felt like, hey, they're about to give it up. They continued to answer both offensively and defensively, and then Syracuse, they were able to take care of business early, and pushed it out. I think we've spent so much time the past few years talking about the opportunities UNC has had to almost end games early, and they don't often take it. So it's nice to see them end it really in the first half, and even when Syracuse made an early run in the second half, for them to answer and put it away for a nice, comfortable victory.
Sherelle, I want to ask you the same thing. What were your takeaways from these past two games this week?
Continuing to find different ways to win games. I think we talked about. I think you asked us last week whether or not we thought the defensive ability and the defensive play was sustainable over the rest of the season. And while I still think it probably isn't at that level, they still continue to play tremendous defense. Obviously against NC State, it was one of the worst shooting games I think NC State's had in quite some time. And then against Syracuse, it wasn't as good. But by that point, the offense had kind of caught up a little bit. So you can kind of see where I think right now, I think they're the number 15 rated offense and the number 7 or 6 rated defense. So I think if you can get those numbers will probably equalize a little bit. And a top 20 defense and a top 20 offense is enough. So I think that was my big takeaway, is that they have some room to they have a little bit of margin for error, which is more than I thought they did at the beginning of the season, because I thought, well, they don't have any whatsoever, because of the way the pieces fit. But I think winning different ways, ugly, grinded out game on the road against State, and then just one where they kind of blitz Syracuse, is a big takeaway. And then I really think, again, you asked us last week, like, what's the one thing that can make this team, better overall? And I think everybody said, well, if Elliot Kadoo can continue to grow, then I think that'll be huge for Carolina. And I think you saw some defensive growth in addition to those 3 or 4 times a game, which is better than the 1 to 2 times a game he was doing it before, where he realizes that people just can't stay in front of him. I mean, the key stretch against Syracuse was that Syracuse had cut it to 16 or 15, and Kadoo hits a runner, gets fouled, misses the free throw, rebound by Harrison Ingram, back out to Kadoo for a layup. He had another nice pass to RJ Davis for a three during that stretch, and I think he had one to RJ that led to that dunk by Baycott. So there was a stretch there where he just kind of took over the game just through his passing and through controlling the offense. So to me, that's the two biggest things. That Elliot Kadoo, we're seeing those small baby steps, I think, that we were seeing in the beginning of the season, and then that they're winning in different ways.
Yeah, the hockey assist to Baycott was something. Just seeing them move the ball that way and have so much fun doing it. Sean, you've watched a lot more ball than I have, you and Sherrell both. I feel like Elliot Kadoo has proven through the first 16 games of the season that he can get to the basket whenever he wants to. Am I overanalyzing that, or do you feel like that's actually bearing fruit and is actually coming to pass?
I think it's nice to have a player that has that ability from the first step, to go with the ball handling. We talked about it last week. Driving right, he was averaging 1.5 points per possession, which we said was insanely high. That's up to 1.64 points per possession. So teams know what he wants to do, and they're still having trouble stopping him, especially given some of the open looks that he did have. There was even a possession against NC State where the defender did a good job of staying in front of him, but at the same time, he was able to really put pressure on the defense. So that just creating a little more space for everybody else. So I think having a guy with that explosiveness and that ability is something UNC has lacked over the years, and I think once again that's just going to continue to grow. And I think even if he's able to just get a little more confidence, once again, not really from the 3-point line, but say that mid range, just stop and pop, or the ability to unleash it a little bit more. I think that will continue to elevate him as teams, begin to set, not begin, but continue to sag off. And
And
then go ahead, Shaw.
no, I was gonna say there's nothing wrong. I think he has to realize too. Sometimes I feel like he gets the ball at the top of the key and they leave him open, and he's like, I have to shoot the three. There's nothing wrong with taking an in rhythm 2-step pull up from the free throw line extended. And I think you talked about, Sean, like late night or live action, how he was doing some of that stuff, and we've seen it or during the course of the season, not often, where 2 dribble pull up, it's up almost automatic. I'm sure Adrian will check the numbers, and this will be wrong, but it feels like it's automatic. So I'd love to see him do that. If they're going to give you 5 or 6 feet, take 2 dribbles and pull up, and it feels like he's more comfortable with that shot anyway.
I think the other thing on Kadoo, once again, goes back to the passing. Obviously a gifted passer. I think everybody's starting to get more comfortable with him. He's getting more comfortable with them. You've seen some of the passes he made to Armando. I think going back to the NC State game, it was getting a little tighter. They had just scored, and he gets the ball out of bounds, one dribble, launches up court to Trimble, who gets in transition and gets a basket. So especially when you're struggling like that offensively, being able to get a few easy baskets like that and just move the ball a little further. Not to mention, once again, how he's getting Davis just some nice catch and shoot looks. So still a ways to go in terms of that ceiling for him, but it's nice to see him continuing to stay more aggressive. And last thing, it also looks like he's been more talkative on the court. In huddles or coming out of timeouts, things of that nature. I've often seen him being the one almost being the most talkative, which I think early on was more of a listener. So nice to see just what looks like continued comfortability with everybody.
I think there's something else that jumped out at me this past week. Uh, we've talked about so much in the offseason, would Hubert Davis use his bench? I think not only is Hubert Davis using the bench now, we're actually seeing consistent contributions from those guys. Sherrell in the group chat during the Syracuse game was pointing out that North Carolina very early in the first half had played 8 guys and 7 of them had scored already. And I think that ended being 11 players in the scorebook for the Tar Heels. Sherrell, do you think this balance is sustainable?
I think it was the under 16, and 6 people had already scored because
It
Armando
was
came out
early.
early. Armando
Yeah.
came out early, and the 5 starters had scored, and then Jalen Washington had a putback. So I think 6 guys had scored by the under 16 in the first half, which is pretty phenomenal. Yeah, I think it's sustainable. Obviously, it's not going to be a situation where Jalen Washington might get 10 one game, and then you don't expect Withers and Washington to be in double figures kind of every game. But I do think as long as one of them or even I guess I'm counting Trimble as kind of like a 6 starter. I've said that all year, but as long as one of them is able to do that offensively, then I think UNC will be fine. And I think that's something they just haven't had in the past. Like they had 13 first half bench points against Syracuse. There were games where they didn't have 5 bench points the last couple of years. So I think you're seeing guys grow into their roles. And the biggest thing, and I hate to keep saying we talked about, but it's fun to kind of marry this stuff with what we observe in the past. But role definition is just a huge thing. Role definition and communication between coaching staff and players is huge. It might be the biggest thing now with the way college basketball is played. And I think this team 100% knows exactly its role. I think maybe Jalen Withers was the only one for the first few games, the first maybe month, that wasn't quite sure what he was supposed to be doing. But I think now he has a firm understanding of what his job is on this team, and his play, it's not a coincidence, has gotten better as he's accepted that role and kind of grown into it. So, they always say, be everyone can't be a star, but be a star in your role, and that is really what's defining North Carolina right now because everybody knows exactly what they're supposed to do, and they go out and they execute. Now, the issue is going to be as the competition continues to ramp and as they hit some hard spots, as they hit inevitably a loss. Yes, this team is going to lose a game, so prepare yourselves. It's going to happen. Like, how do you respond? Do you stay and um, you know play your role, or do you try to do too much? And that's when things can start to go south. So they're together, and that's a good thing. So I think it can keep going. We'll see.
And we've talked about too the quality of teams in this league is not what it has been 5 or 6 years ago. That's not to say you don't have to play well every single game. I mean, we saw just this past week Louisville beat Miami. But you do need to bring it when you play. But yeah, there should be plenty of opportunities for North Carolina to kind of continue to stack wins. Sean, looking at this roster and seeing Hubert Davis playing, 8, 9, sometimes a legit 10 deep, do you take any solace or you take any comfort in thinking that North Carolina's 7th or 8th guy might be better than some of the 7th or 8th guys that they're going to see the rest of the conference season?
I think you get it, especially watching Seth Trimble in terms of the improvement that they made. And I think, with Washington, even though he's been playing, super offensively and is growing defensively, sometimes you get a little worried when he's getting, can get pushed around or maybe he's not catching the ball at times. But I think Trimble has been so solid because I think coming into the season, you're wondering, hey, what's his role going to look like? How does he super athletic offensively, can get to the basket and finish, which he did in high school, and defensively can probably be a great on ball defender. But his outside shooting, I think, has just opened up so much more for him. And I kind of continue to wait for that to fall off, but he continues to hit big shots when they're needed, and he's not taking a high volume, but he's hitting them consistently. So I think just his ability and his growth has made what you're saying, I think, very, very accurate. And then I think even going down to Zaden High, who I think can still give the team something as he's continuing to grow because he is extremely aggressive, crashing the boards and has a little fire to him. So I think you're seeing that freshman to sophomore year leap in terms of Trimble and Washington. But to Sherrell's point, in terms of roles, you have guys who aren't, even if they're making the leap, thinking, "Hey, I need to be the alpha, or I need to show that I need to be scoring 15 points a game." They're playing well within the system and still letting the older guys do what they're doing.
What's crazy is, we talked about UNC recruiting last year and everything that happened with adding Zaden High to the class. Sherrell said plenty of times, and both of you guys have, for watching this game, talked about the fact that, he's got length, he's got some athletic ability. I think maybe I took for granted that he would be so noticeable when he's on the court in a positive way. A lot of times when you have freshman players that play for North Carolina, when they get in, they make freshman mistakes. That's not to say Zaden High is not making freshman mistakes, but one thing you are noticing in his limited minutes is every time he gets in there, he does something positive. Like he was in for the last 90 seconds against NC State and ended up getting a bucket right before the half. And so when you think about guys like, yeah, he's going to have a couple of fouls, but I swear every time he gets into a game, I do feel like he's bringing some positive juice and contributing in a positive way. And that's going back to the comment Sherrell always says about does the staff trust you? He's going to earn a lot of trust continuing to put that energy in. Sherrell?
If you remember, in the preseason, Hubert Davis kind of sung his praises, and I think we were all still a little wary. I always confuse those two, of whether or not that was Hubert Davis kind of being super positive with his guys, or if that was actually what was happening in practice. And I think now we see that he really did make a huge impression on them, and that he's a part of their plans going forward. Now, obviously, with the way Harrison Ingram has played and with the way Baycott plays, you're not going to get a ton of minutes if you're Zaden High. But like you said, they trust him and they'll let him come in for a couple minutes. And, they went to him in the post one time against State for a hook shot. And against Syracuse for a hook shot. And he had a layup, against State. So they trust him that much to have him in the game. And I think that bodes well for the future because in these days, the way college basketball is played, you have to start thinking about your roster next year at any given moment. And the fact that he's getting minutes and he's really embedding himself in the culture and playing often, I think that will help him stay around. Not that there was any doubt about that, but that'll make him want to stay around. Whereas other guys who didn't play, last year, they left. So that's all that is consideration, I think, when you're talking about Zaden High and what he's been doing in his limited minutes.
And Sherrell just mentioned the word culture, and I think that's been a question of what is the culture at UNC, especially under Hubert Davis. And I think with the portal, each year is going to be very different. But I think you can see with this team, you talked about how it was kind of perfectly melded in terms of the star upperclassmen mixing in with some talented transfers, and then you have the star freshman coming in whose style of play, the pass first, just enhances what everybody else is doing. But I was listening to a podcast the other day with Doc Rivers, and he was talking about joy. Our teams, what teams are playing with joy, and what teams just don't enjoy playing with each other. And even when you're not the most talented team, if you're playing together, that can negate maybe some athleticism deficiencies or other things that exist. And I think you see that on a daily basis. We talked about Cormac Ryan and even Paxton Wojcik, the fire that they would bring, but I think Harrison Ingram, once I think he gets after it a lot more on the court than you think in terms of maybe some of the trash talk or things he's saying um, on the court. But at the same time, you see him with that smile, even when he's messing up, when things are going well, when he's going off the court for a timeout, and how people are all interacting, not just with him, but everybody. And I think that in itself is something obviously that can't be measured, but something this team has. And one, it makes it fun to watch, but two, it does make it easier for everybody to play together versus individuals. And then even Cormac Ryan, who has struggled, maybe not played great the last two games, he's still giving it his all defensively. Even when he got beat to the basket against NC State, he still made it tough for them, and he's still the first one to go give somebody a high five after they made a basket. So even though he's not shooting the ball from three, he's still making positive team contributions.
It's funny that you mentioned Doc Rivers and kind of joy. One of the things that Hubert Davis actually cited in one of his press availabilities recently was he was sharing kind of one of Doc Rivers' philosophies about Ubuntu, which is a Southern African. I think it's Zulu is where it's rooted in, but it's this concept of like full on humanity and connectedness and like the full virtue of humanity and giving of yourself to those around you. And if you start putting that into a basketball context, I think that's incredibly deep. But I think it's also a great example and a great application of what's happening in Chapel Hill this year, where you have guys who you've heard us say it on this show, but you've heard the coaching staff and the players say it. They're all bought in. They're all very much, Rail said it a second ago. There's a lot of togetherness. There's a lot of connectiveness. There's a lot of connectedness. And so it doesn't. It's not lost on me the fact that you're talking about hearing Doc Rivers recently, Sean, because I think that there's definitely a through line there between he and Hubert Davis and their relationship and so forth. And so that we're not just being totally positive here. Concerns, right? We did see the Tar Heels win two different ways this week, as y'all mentioned. Defensive, they were good at some points. I think that the Syracuse just tapped at some point in the game at the Smith Center. But what concerns do you guys have? Sherrell, I'll come to you first about that one. Looking forward.
Yeah, the 3-point shooting has gone from like a strength to not concerned to a little concerned, because Carolina's obviously 5-0 in ACC play, and we know that 3 of those games were on the road. But I'm going to read you the stats from 3-point range in their 5 ACC games. Against Florida State, way back when, they were 5 of 22. That's 22%. Against Pittsburgh, they were 5 of 17. That's 29%. Against Clemson, they were 8 of 23. That's 34%. That's the best they've shot in ACC play. Against NC State, they were 7 of 21 for 33%. And against Syracuse, they were 7 of 26 for 26%. So it makes you wonder, at some point, are teams going to start adjusting how they are defending North Carolina? Because right now it's kind of RJ Davis will make 3 or 4. You can kind of guarantee that. Cormac may go 2 for 7, or he may go 0 for 8. Harrison Ingram will make 1 or 2, but the last 5 games he's kind of trending downward in that. He was up around 46%. He's now down to 40. He's not leading the team anymore. RJ Davis is at 41%. So I wonder about that, and that has to get corrected. And I think the biggest place for improvement there is Cormac Ryan. He's shooting not quite 28% from 3 this season, which is way beneath or below what any of us thought going in. I think they've been able to survive because Seth Trimble has hit some timely threes. I think Jalen Washington hit a couple, and even Jalen Withers hit one in an ACC game. So that's kind of mitigated it, but that really has to improve moving forward.
Two things. One, Seth Trimble has become automatic from that right corner 3. I feel like he's hit 10 if he's hit one of them this year. Sean, do you have any idea? And I'm going back to one of your favorite mantras. Do you have any idea how many threes North Carolina is averaging per game right now?
I should know this off the top of my head, but I'm going to go 6.2.
7.8. So they're hovering around your number of 8. But to Sherrell's point, for the volume that they're taking, they definitely could bump that number up a little bit. And it could be something as simple as Cormac Ryan kind of finding his stroke. So it'll be interesting to watch that. Sean, give me your concerns that you've seen this past week that you feel like could probably be addressed.
Well, in terms of the 8 number, watching the Syracuse game, they got to 5 or 6 pretty early on, and then obviously they finished 7 of 26, so struggled from that. I think concerns, once again, defensively, going into ACC play, they were in the mid 40th percentile from Synergy's perspective defensively, and they've jumped up into the 84th, which I think is a tremendous leap and backs up what you're seeing in KenPom and all the other metrics. I still think that's, they're going to kind of regression to the mean. They're going to come down, but at the same time, they are, I think, just keeping their man in front of them. They're helping when help is needed. I think when they're doubling in the NC State game, there was a trust from both the players and the coaching staff of how you rotate once the ball is moved. So while it may come down and teams are at some point going to shoot better than a collective 20% or what we've been seeing from 3, I think just how aggressive they've been will help. But I would agree with Sherrell offensively. 1.23 points per possession against Syracuse was great. Probably much higher before the final 6 minutes, but still an area of concern in terms of that. And I think, Sherrell mentioned Cormac Ryan and his ability. I think we all talked about, hey, can he shoot 35 to 38% from three? That would be fantastic. And if we can get Ingram up to 35, 33 to 35% from where he had been at, and Ingram at the 40%, but in ACC plays around 22%. So I think offensively, he's the one that I think really needs to kind of not pick it up, because he's hit big shots when he has made the threes, and he's found other ways to score. And the defensive rebounding and offensive rebounding has been huge. But I think he's the glue that can continue helping this move at a fast pace for UNC as they look to stay in the top 10 nationally.
All right, so let's take a look at the upcoming games this week. They've got Louisville at home Wednesday night. That's going to be a late one. Sean, will be perfect for you, you West Coast bum, you. And then there'll be a game at Boston College next Saturday. Previews. What do you guys expect to see out of these two games? We've talked about Louisville struggles. Does seem they're finding something there a little bit better. I think they played better against NC State. They did beat Miami, and then Boston College has been up and down this year as well. Playing at Conti is always really weird. Sean, your expectations for this week?
I think from an expectation standpoint, you're obviously playing two of the worst teams in the conference, so you want to come out with 2 wins. I think would love to see. I know it's not easy just to say, hey, just do what you did against Syracuse, so jump out to a big lead and keep it. So I think there'll definitely be some more struggles, but I think you want to see offensively just the ball moving, continuing to take good shots, and then defensively, how they've just been playing collectively together. And I think playing at Boston College is always UNC has always done very well there. So hopefully that continues. But I think really just continuing to offensively continue to play well. Elliot Kadoo, would love to see him, as Sherrell was mentioning, take some of the pull-up jump shots, or even a little, threes a little earlier in the game. Just kind of let him get out and running. And Jalen Washington as well. Just he did it once against Syracuse. It was a little bit longer outside of that 8 to 10 comfort range, but it's still an automatic, face up jump shot, and want to see him just continue to use that as part of his overall game.
Real Dog, same question.
Well, I think now that you're going to be top 5, top 4. Everything changes, because this team so far, I think, has thrived on, we're not going to be what last season was, and we all came from bad situations, et cetera, et cetera. Well, now you're the one who's ranked in the top 5. You're the one who has to take everybody's best shot. Everyone's trying to prove something by beating you, as opposed to the way it's been throughout the season. Like, they're trying to make their mark. They're trying to get their quad 1 win, which is a change. This is what North Carolina has traditionally been, but not what North Carolina's been the last 5.5 years, outside of a brief stretch. So I think how they respond to that will say a lot. I think this team hasn't given us any indication thus far that they will do some of the things that traditional Carolina teams do, which is come out flat after big wins, just have an inexplicable loss. They may not play well, but you expect them to always compete. And I think that was a question over both both coaching staffs over the last few years. So that is a win in itself. So maybe that will help mitigate some of those potential upsets. But again, this team is going to lose again. So everybody just accept that. It's going to happen, whether or not it's Louisville or Boston College, we'll see. But they're going to lose again, and we'll see how they respond. But you would think, despite Louisville playing better, taking NC State to the wire, beating Miami at Miami, that they can handle Louisville at home, just because of some of the advantages UNC has. And then, Conti form will be it'll probably be 50-50 Carolina fans and BC fans, to be honest. But
it'll be half empty.
It'll be half empty. It'll be half empty, and of the other half that's full, it'll be 25% Carolina and 25% Boston College. But there have been some tough games up there for UNC where they were clearly the better team, and where UNC has had better teams than this one, and they've struggled. We go all the way back to the 2007, 2008 with Tyrese Rice, and they were down by 20 and came back and won. Those type games. There were games where
that was a different Boston College.
Yeah, that's true. But Quentin Post is a good player. He could be an all ACC type guy. I think he is again. So anytime you go on the road, just like we talked about with Clemson, Pittsburgh, NC State, you gotta have your A game. So all that to say, as I ramble on, I think they should get 2 wins this week. But it's going to be tough, and now they are the hunted, to use a cliche, and they have to adjust to that.
Yeah, BC is weird, man. I feel like every time North Carolina plays there, it's a bring your own vibe situation because
there's like you're saying, because I mean I think the COVID year they went up there and won by 40. Caleb Love was hitting everything, but then there was one year where Roy Williams had a vertigo bout and Steve Robinson became the head coach. And I think they were ranked like top 12, and they barely won against a terrible Boston College team. So you just never know.
It's weird, man, because it's that arena's half empty no matter what. And like Sherrell said, you're looking at a fair showing of UNC fans. They're always there from the Boston Carolina Club and those folks. But yeah, man, it's rough getting a vibe in there. Go ahead, Sean.
We'll need to check this stat, but I feel at the spread they have a very strong record at Boston College.
All right, noted. We will file that away and check that one out. Something that happened this week at the Smith Center was Dream on 3, who is it's a national now nonprofit, but started in Charlotte. Shout out to my guy, channeling my inner Corey Alexander. But shout out to Brandon Lindsay, the founder of that organization. Dream on 3 is essentially an organization that grants sports themed wishes for kids who could use it. And they hooked up with UNC and Eric Hoots and the staff over at Carolina Basketball to deliver a dream for Colburn, who's a young man from my son's elementary school over in Durham. And guys, Colburn got to take a limo over to watch practice on Friday, hung out with the team some then. He got great tickets, got plenty of photos with Roy Williams and the team, got to go in the locker room after the game. Just they really rolled out the red carpet for him. But I think the biggest thing that happened for Colburn's trip over to Chapel Hill was he got a shopping trip to Johnny T-shirt. Right? So like Dream on 3, they're making kids' dreams come true, are including a shopping trip in that dream to Johnny T-shirt. I can't think of a better way to describe it because Colburn got to go in there and pick out his swag. And so when he went to the UNC Syracuse game, he was dressed to the nines. He had something new from you name it, whatever brand he wanted to get, because Johnny T-shirt has all that stuff. I don't know if he might be a premium subscriber. He's a little young, so maybe his family are premium subscribers. But if they were, they probably got that extra 10% off of his purchase price there at Johnny T. So I'm sure that was probably the highlight, in spite of meeting the team and the win and the limo and all that stuff. I'm betting the shopping spree at Johnny T-shirt was probably his biggest highlight of the weekend. So definitely appreciate Johnny T-shirt. Shout out to Colburn and Dream on 3 and those folks who are doing good things for kids who could use their day brightened a little bit. Press pause. Going to let the national guys come in here and drop some ads in. We'll be right back to talk a little bit of recruiting before we get out here on this episode of the Coast to Coast podcast here on InsideCarolina.com. Appreciate everybody being a part of the show tonight. Sherrell and Sean with us as always, and breaking down the goods, giving us the insight that hopefully our listeners have come to expect, our viewers are looking for when they tune in. Sherrell, recruiting side of things just a little bit. Hoop Hall Classic, one of the more notable, I guess, for lack of a better term, tournaments or events. It's put on every year by the Hoop Hall, the Hall of Fame for basketball, put that together. Tell us a little bit about that and why that matters to Tar Heel fans, please, sir.
It's a huge event. Maybe the biggest one, not during the summer. I think it's definitely up there. The national championships are up there too, but every January they go up there to Springfield. They invite some of the best teams in the country, public schools, private schools, academies, prep powerhouses, you name it. And they have a huge tournament for boys and girls. And the games, actually, there's a game on. We're recording this Sunday night. There's a game on right now. I think Montverde is playing IMG on ESPN2. And then there'll be games on Monday all throughout the day on ESPNU, I believe, including Link Academy, who we know has 2024 UNC signee James Brown, as well as 2025 Alfred guard Jasper Johnson. So the UNC staff, we know, went up there on Saturday. Koa Pete, another one of UNC's top targets, is there. The Boozer brothers, UNC targets are there. AJ DeBansta, Prolific Prep is there. So some of the biggest names in high school basketball are all playing. And it's just a really cool event because everybody's there in the one arena, and it's where a lot of connections happen. It's where, if you remember, Ian Jackson announced his commitment to UNC last year. I think it's tomorrow last year that he announced his commitment to UNC at Hoopball. So big time
out of
tournament.
nowhere.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, what a day. We need to do a podcast on that one day about, like, at 11 a.m. It
That
was
was
like
nuts.
he's going to Kentucky, and then at 11:30 we started to get, we're like, it's going to be Carolina. We're like, are you serious? And then he announced it like 1 or 1:30 or something. But yeah, just a huge tournament, big names, all the people in the industry who mean anything are pretty much there, and all the best players are there too. And obviously, Heber Davis and Jeff Lebo were there Saturday night. I think they were there again today before heading back.
Yeah, and if that many teams, that many prospects are in one place, like Sherrell said, any coach who's worth his or her salt will be up there as well. Sean, I understand also that you did a nice little video breakdown for us about cousin Drake Powell. You want to tell us a little bit about that?
Well, I was just trying to piggyback off of what Sherrell did with the live recap on the game against Myers Park on Saturday night. So definitely enjoyed being able to read through the quarterly recaps that he did provide on how Drake was doing both offensively and defensively, and was lucky enough to have video that today. So I was able to really piece everything together that Sherrell put on the message board post. So it's about 2 minutes, but I think always good to see outside of the 30-second highlight clips, how a full game look for a player. And I think both offensively and defensively, you can see, some of the just great things that he does do. Also some of the, improvement areas. And I think one area that we have been and will continue to talk regarding Drake Powell is his 3-point shooting. And that's something, when we did a video coming out of the Oregon tournament, he was in I believe the low 20s from a 3-point percentage. And now in the season, he's up to about 43%. So north of 40. So obviously over the last really 2 to 3 weeks has improved tremendously, similar to UNC's defense. But yeah, take a look at that and read through Sherrell's live recap that he did also.
Yeah, and he played well. I think in stretches last night. Obviously, Myers Park, who they were playing, is the prohibitive favorite to win the state championship at their division. I think they are the best public team in the state. I think they're probably the best team overall in the state, including some of the academies around. The big three, I would say, for them: Bishop Boswell, who signed to go to Tennessee; Sir Muhammad, who signed to go to Notre Dame; and then AJ Sadiq White, who is like a top 40 player in 2025. And the biggest thing last night was just Northwood didn't have the size, really. I would say the size or athleticism to kind of hang with Myers Park. They were down most of the game. They were down 14-7 at the end of the first quarter, and somehow got up 19-16 there in the second quarter. And then you could kind of see the talent for Myers Park take over. Northwood played extremely hard, and I think for Drake Powell, the next step for him, and when you're a top 5 player, people start to kind of pick you apart a little bit. But there were times where he probably could have forced the action, I think, offensively a little bit more than he did. And that's not a negative on him at all, because he obviously is their best player, and they're looking to him to do a lot, whether it's he blocked 3 or 4 shots, he was grabbing rebounds, he covered White, he covered Muhammad, and he covered Boswell at some point during the game. So obviously he's doing a lot, but there are glimpses where you can see, like, oh wow, this is insert whatever phrase you want to use about what he could be, and then it goes away for a few minutes, and then it comes back for 9, 10, 11 plays, and it goes away for 4. And I think part of it probably is the team construction and the constraints there. So what I wanted to get to, and I want to ask Sean about this, I want to ask you too about it, Joey, is that when you see someone who's ranked in the top 3, when they come into college, your assumption is they're going to come in and give you, 14 to 15 points a game. And if they don't, what's going on? And I think we as a media and, we as a basketball community need to go ahead and get ahead of that, because Drake's skill set, while he can do it as far as, going ISO and just getting buckets, that's not exactly, who he is as a basketball player. He is a really all around developed, mature basketball player. And I think the expectation for him entering Carolina is what we say every single podcast, is that he's not going to be excuse me, a net negative when he comes in. If he doesn't start, he's going to, knock down some open shots. He's going to really compete. And I think that is the baseline that we should start with. And people will say, well, he's a top 3 player, top 5 player. You got to ask for more than that. And I think his ranking is a lot about projection. He's really good now, don't get me wrong, but his ranking is about projection. And I think it's just, we kind of have to thread that needle between, yes, he's a really good player, but no, you shouldn't expect, 16 points and looking like RJ Davis as a freshman.
Yeah, but I think the beautiful thing that North Carolina has going for it right now is Harrison Ingram may still be on campus for that. And I think Harrison Ingram, even if he isn't around next year, I see Sean is about to break his neck, shaking his head. Even if Harrison Ingram is not in Chapel Hill next year, I think that's a good comp for North Carolina, at least from a statistical standpoint. That if he gets to play the minutes that Ingram is getting next year, which he may or may not, I think that style of contribution is not too far to expect. It's a lot different than seeing a guy be a 25-point getter every night out because he's in the top 3. All right, Sean, cut that apart.
Well, I think it goes back to the podcast we did with Travis. I thought when we talked about Drake collectively, it made a lot of sense, where similar to Harrison Ingram's role, you don't expect him to be the number 1 guy despite the ranking. I think from a scoring perspective, Ian Jackson will provide that, just from the freshman coming in, but from being able to do so many things on the court. And I think just seeing, even if he is going ISO, or his pull-ups from mid-range and what he's doing in high school, obviously a lot of that won't exactly translate into UNC system, but I think continuing to develop his skill set just gives him, more variety when he does get to UNC. But to Charles' point, there will still be a significant learning curve. I mean, right now we're watching it in action with Elliot Kadoo. Obviously, he did reclass, but you could see all the things that he was doing, and the growth that's needed. So, yeah, I think, you know, not to overhype it and caution. And in terms of the ranking, he is top 5 currently, but you don't see him on the Nike Hoop Summit team, which had 10 or 12 guys announced this week. So I think he's going to bring a lot of the intangibles as well as his athleticism, both offensively and defensively. And going to that video, I think some of the blocks he had were pretty remarkable, just how he was able to time that and where he was able to get to on the defensive end.
Okay, I'm gonna look in the camera real quick, Joey, and just make this point and hammer it home. I'm not saying that Drake Powell is not a great player. I'm not saying that. What I'm trying to explain is that the expectation with people who have his ranking is that scoring is at the top of the list, and that is what they're going to do. And I want to make a comparison, but I don't want to cloud things, because people will say, "Oh, you can't compare him to him," so I'm not going to do that. But I will just say
I already did. It's fine.
He's going to contribute a ton as a freshman. It just is not going to be 20 points. I'd be surprised if he scores 20 points at any point during his freshman year, and that's not a bad thing. There's not a lot of freshmen who score 20 points, but he's going to be a great defender. He's going to rebound. He's going to hit open shots. He's going to push tempo. He's going to be a great finisher, which you can't ask for more than that. I just want to just marry, like I said, the expectation divide that comes with his ranking and kind of the player that he is. So just, I'm not saying he's a bad player. I'm not saying he's not going to be great for Carolina. It's just that scoring isn't going to be something that I think he is going to contribute as a freshman, nor frankly that they will really need for him to contribute as a freshman.
Yeah.
We did see an alley-oop on the offensive end this past weeks, and if Elliot Kadoo were to stay around, I think you would be seeing a significant amount of alley-oops being thrown to Drake Powell and Ian Jackson for next season.
Another thing, and I don't mind saying this, I'm going to rip off one of Sean's favorite points, is that I don't think you'll have an issue with Drake Powell like you do some other freshmen with the ball getting stuck in his hands. I do think he's got enough court awareness, self-awareness, and then vision to understand what's going to be expected of him to be able to keep the ball moving, which, again, as we've seen with freshmen and with North Carolina in the recent past, that's been an issue. Boys, since I butchered it so poorly last week, why don't we make sure we give the nod to our friends at Congruity HR that they so greatly deserve. Congruity HR, big fans of Inside Carolina, and we are actually greater fans of them. They will optimize your business, and they're like, Joey, what does that mean? Stop using this corporate mumbo jumbo. Tell me what optimizing my business means. Well, if you're a small business or medium-sized business owner, or even a manager, somebody that makes decisions at your business, you recognize that the key to your business growth is being able to focus on profitability. Well, profitability isn't always top line income. Profitability can also be where you're saving money on expenses. And what Congruity is going to be able to do is look at your business model, and it's not just P&L analysis. Congruity is going to look at what your company does, and they're going to say, hey, these are places where you could be a little more efficient. These are places where you could cut back on some things. These are some places where you can actually save money by doing X, Y, or Z. And Congruity will do that to help you with your human resources decisions, benefits, a lot of other things that are really weighing on you, both financially and mentally as a business owner. Hear me now, believe me later on. Congruity HR /Tar Heels. Go check it out. Get that free assessment that they're offering for your business. They will tell you how they can help you. If they can't help you for some reason, they will say to you, hey, sir, ma'am, I don't think we can really do a lot to help you because your business is great as it is. Great. Then you've made another contact and move on down the road. But I have this sneaky suspicion if you go to that website, take the free assessment, they might be able to tell you how they can save you some money. We want you to appreciate Congruity the way that we appreciate them and the way they appreciate us. Congruity HR /Tar Heels. Check them out. We appreciate the support of this show and appreciate their patience with this host who butchered the read last week. Thank you, Congruity. Sean, give me your two cents presented by Congruity HR.
First one, we already talked about him a lot, is Harrison Ingram, more from the rebounding perspective. And I think when a team is playing unselfishly, rebounding is always an area where individuals can be selfish and it still help the team. So I think the aggression that you've seen him come in trying to grab some of the defensive rebounds as of late, I think
man is on a tear, ain't he?
I think three double-digit performances in the last 4, and I think it also takes just some of the pressure off of Armando to be able to trying to grab everything. We saw what happened earlier with UConn and some other teams just dominating the offensive boards. Obviously, we'll see what happens against some bigger teams, but I think that's always an area where individuals can be not as selfish as they want, but they can play selfishly, chasing the defensive rebounding and offensive rebounding stats because it helps the team. So hopefully we continue to see those type of performances. And then, just from a collective standpoint, we'll see where they end up in the rankings. There was a lot of top 10 teams that did lose this week, but I think no matter where they end over the last month, they've been in the top 10. And I think that's just been that consistency is something, at least myself, and I think a lot of UNC fans have wanted or yearned for over the years, where you lose a lot of games early on and you're just trying to stay tournament relevant. So I think we'll see how long it lasts, but it's nice to see UNC in that upper echelon where I think a lot of us believe they should be as much as possible.
Yeah, right now Harrison Ingram looks like every dad that listens to this show going after the last piece of chicken on the plate, right? Like it's every single one of them is like, this is mine. Nobody else is going to touch it. This is mine. This is my house. This is my last piece of chicken. Sherrell, give me your 2 cents presented by Congruity.
Yeah, to follow up on Sean's, I think a couple of the Harrison Ingram stats, like he's tied or set his career high in rebounds like twice in the last 2 weeks. And then his first 2 seasons at Stanford, I think it was 6 times. he had 10 or more rebounds in a game, and through 16 games at UNC, he's done it 5. So he's almost matched 2 years of production in half a season as far as rebounding at UNC. My 2 pennies, one, Congruity, HR, again, great company, love them. I want to send them down to the Dallas Metroplex and really do some work with that system down there in Dallas with Jerry Jones. They really need to optimize their business. They really need an assessment. So I'm so tempted, but I don't want to waste their time. I'm so tempted to go to congruity.com/Tar Heels and fill one out for the Dallas Cowboys, but I don't want to waste Congruity's time. So I'm not going to do that. But I thought about it. So thank you, Congruity, for at least giving me the option of thinking about it.
Do you think Congruity can fix what's going on down there?
There's a lot of Carolina football going on with Dallas Cowboys football. So I'll leave it at that.
Ooh, I like the
that
overlap.
you always get to the precipice. Dallas is a little more successful, I would say, overall. But it's always about getting to the precipice and then just kind of shooting yourself in the foot once you get there. So there's a lot going on there. Anyway, moving on. My favorite stat to track the last few years has been conference only defensive efficiency. And
Let's hear
Joey,
it.
we're a fourth of the way through the conference season. There's 15 games left. They played 5. There's 20. I wasn't a math major, but that is a fourth, I'm pretty sure. And UNC is number 1 in overall defensive efficiency, number 1 in defensive effective field goal percentage, number 1 in 2-point percentage allowed, and number 1 in 3-point percentage allowed. And then surprisingly, they're blocking about 11.5% of opponents' attempts. So there's rim protection. They're limiting threes. They're making guys shoot tough 2s, and they're not giving up many good looks. I shouldn't say they're not giving up many good looks. The teams aren't making many good looks against UNC. So even though, if you read Adrian's stuff, you know that some of it is there's a luck factor there, even though UNC is playing good defense.
Yeah.
But, a fourth of the way through the season, I think we all would have been surprised, one, at the number that UNC is allowing, 84.4 points per 100 possessions, that's UVA territory. And then 2, that they're leading the conference in so many defensive advanced metrics.
I think you'd take that and you'd run with it. And the block shots category, I agree. And even when they're not blocking shots, or even if they're not defending shots well, what you saw at the end of the NC State game for basically the whole second half, the opponent was getting one look, and that was it, because North Carolina is focused so much on rebounding. It's a lot to enjoy, and I think we'll close with that tonight. Folks that listen to this show, you may not have had as many opportunities for joy and really appreciating Carolina basketball in the last few years, but if you can't find fun in this team right now, and I know I've said it before, but I'm going to keep saying it because there's so much of it to be had with how the team's playing, how they get along, what they look like, how they represent the university, just the way they seem contagious on the floor with enjoying each other. If you cannot have fun with this North Carolina basketball team right now, you need to get your fun meter checked. Whether that means, call Congruity, see if they can fix your fun meter, call your doctor, see if they have a prescription for it, or whatever. If you can't enjoy the type of basketball North Carolina is playing right now, I don't know that you'll ever enjoy basketball in your life. So I share that just because I know it's not always been fun the last few years. I know it's not always been fun when we've been doing these shows, but this brand of ball they're playing right now is up there on the enjoyability scale. Fellas, I'm always grateful for the time y'all make for this show. Shout out to our listeners who always seem to work us into their routine. We're glad that you're here. Again, we want your feedback. If you don't like what you're hearing, let us know. Drop a review for us there on however your podcast system does. Rating review, we always appreciate those. Special shout out to John Siegley for producing. Appreciate him. Appreciate Johnny T-Shirt for sponsoring. Congruity for sponsoring. But Sean and Sherrell for making the show what it is. Until next time, I am Joey Powell for Inside Carolina on the Coast to Coast podcast. We will talk to you very soon.